Well, friends, before we proceed with the evening, there has been a loss of a very important Hindi writer and critic, Nambar Singh. So we will observe 1 minute silence to pay homage to him. He was a major figure in Hindi and the Indian literary world, a man of great scholarship and a great scholarship and critical vigor. So we'll rise for a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Raza Foundation and the India International Center, we welcome you this evening to the 5th session of a running series called Gandhi Matters. We started this series to cover the 150th year of Gandhiji, which is on, and we've had 4 speakers so far. Professor Ashish Nandi, who is also here, Professor Ganesh Devi, Professor James Douglas, Mr. Triti Suhud. And today is the 5th session, and we have Professor VINIT HAKSAR, who currently works at the School of Philosophy, Psychology and Language Sciences. I never knew that there was a school possible with these 3 different disciplines. The University of Edinburgh. He has done research in socio-political philosophy, legal philosophy, applied philosophy, and ethics. And I ran into someone last evening, so Routledge Keegan Paul, and they said they are the publishers of his book, which is also the theme of the lecture today, that is Satyagrha and the Conquest of Evil. After he has spoken, there will be time for questions and brief comments. Keep them ready. Professor VINIT HAKSAR.
And I'm going to. Do I have to hold it?
Would that work?
Well, except that I want to start with saying that Gandhi and Tolstoy were perfectionists. Now, perfectionism is a doctrine that wants to maximize all that is best in the world. So all individuals should develop all the best qualities. So what are the best qualities? And in the West, there are a lot of people like Nietzsche and others who have stressed that this perfectionism is associated with a rather grand view of people doing great art and great music and great action, people like Napoleon, literary figures like Goethe, and so this is perfectionism. And Gandhi, following Tolstoy, had quite a different version of perfectionism, which confined it just to morals. It was moral perfectionism and perhaps spiritual perfectionism also. But everything else, art, etc., great art or great music or great literature, and especially great men of action like Napoleon and others, these were not admired by Gandhi. These were not people we should emulate. Now, he had use for things like art and literature, but only when it's connected with moral and spiritual well-being of human beings. So this was following Tolstoy that Gandhi took this view. Tolstoy made a very interesting point that I'll give a small quote from him. Sorry, I may not find it. If I don't have it, I think it's roughly this, that you see, perfectionism has a danger that all these great people I mentioned to you, Napoleon and others, they achieve great things, or so-called great things, and the rest of us, they get left out. We just get vicarious pleasure at best by following the lives of these people, by admiring their adventures. And this is a highly inegalitarian philosophy. And in fact, some people thought that, have suggested that there are people, it's also connected with racism. People like Rashdal, professor of moral philosophy at Oxford, many years ago, he suggested that the lower races could be used as fodder for the higher races, because higher races achieve greater things. Even if you cut out the racial element, there's still individuals will differ in their qualities. And it will be, it's an extremely odious view, I think, that you admire some people much more than others because they happen to be more fortunate and be born with some more talents. Gandhi and Tolstoy had something different in mind. With moral and spiritual welfare, with perfectionism also, one could say that this is also could lead to inequalities because some people are well endowed spiritually and morally, others are not. But Tolstoy had a very interesting answer to this objection. And he said it's like a handicap race. A thief on the cross with Christ. He can, as long as he makes progress, you see the progress he has made from where he was, a sinner, to where he has got to now, and then that is the measure of his achievement, his moral and spiritual progress in this life, and that is what we should go by. So that now everyone gets in this race. It's quite a fair race. That you make allowance for handicaps. So both Tolstoy and Gandhi had respect for people who are fallen creatures, as it were, and because they're making an effort to get out and progress. And it's the amount you progress in this life, not where not the height at which you are, that matters. Not if you're just smug and you've achieved some greatness in the past, you're not going to be rewarded on their account. Now, the other thing I want to point out about Tolstoy and Gandhi's perfectionism is this. There are two kinds of ideals. One which has unattainable ideals, and the other are attainable ideals. Now, in favor of attainable ideals, you might argue that look, this is we don't want to be too demanding, so let's make it realistic. Let's have ideals which are realistic and not too high. But both Tolstoy and Gandhi rejected for what is, I think, quite a good reason. They say unattainable ideals have a wonderful majesty and awe about them. In fact, they were almost like God to both of them. Gandhi talks of truth as God. And truth is also an ideal. It's never achieved fully. Non-violence is also an ideal. It's never achieved fully. So these are things that are, you're so awestruck. It's something that is not just something you practice to, but you practice only to a limited degree. But you worship the ideal, you're so awestruck by it. And it will have it has a great pull on action also, because it inspires us to to greater things in morality and spirituality. Truth for Gandhi was with a capital T. Now, someone like Russell explicitly said truth with a capital T, he doesn't make sense of it. There are a lot of true statements and things. But Gandhi had something else in mind. He was looking at the core of the universe and seeing what is the spiritual and moral basis of it. And that's what he was trying to discover. It was not by the head that you could get to the truth for Gandhi. In these matters, the truth was also at a very practical level. There he used his head. And he said quite modestly that he doesn't have any more ordinary intelligence than other people. But for the things that are beyond reason, you should never go against reason for Gandhi. But things that are beyond reason, these are things that require different qualities, which Gandhi had cultivated to a great degree. He spent his life cultivating them. What are these qualities? They're things like humility, purity of heart, and they managed to discover. If you have them, then you discover the truth, which is beyond the scientific kind of broadly scientific realm. So this was now Gandhi. If you look at the humility, he wasn't. Ordinarily, I was going to say I never met Gandhi. It's almost true, but it's irrelevant. What I mean is that he wouldn't have been a humble man if you wouldn't meet him. He had a lot of disciples and a lot of, and the man who challenged the British Empire could hardly be a meek fellow. So, in what sense was he humble? I still think he was humble, but he was humble in the sense that with regard to God. With regard to truth, as it were, he saw himself as insignificant compared to the whole universe, and that's how he could worship truth, which was God to him. That's how he could worship non-violence, which was also a kind of God to him. That it was so. This is the way in which he was humble, that he reduced himself to zero. He used this expression to a cipher, and then you worship God. Now, purity of heart is another thing that purity of heart is another thing that was absolutely vital to Gandhi, because unless you have a pure heart, you will not see the truth in spiritual and moral matters. So he cultivated it, and to some extent he would have he would see these ideals. Literally, he wouldn't. They're not things that are perceived or seen, but they are felt. Truth, he said, is something. God's presence is something that you feel, but and you get glimpses of it from time to time, but not with your senses. And the secret of it is purity of heart, humility, etc. So this was roughly his view, and now I want to suggest also. I want to discuss certain specific problems that arise for Gandhi, not so much in his search for truth, but in his practice of non-violence. As I said to you, non-violence is not just a negative state, it's a positive state of love, and it's a means to truth. But the means for Gandhi, as you know, as important as the end, if not more important. So in terms of importance, they are just as high, just as worthy of worship, and also of study. So now, Now, one interesting feature of Gandhi's views were that non-violence was not just it wasn't just an ideal. If it's an ideal, you can say that, look, it doesn't matter if we haven't reached it. In fact, we never can reach the ideal. It's unattainable. But we strive towards it. So that's fine. But for Gandhi, the complication came because it was also a moral principle. Now, if it's a moral principle, and not just an ideal, then each time you do something, you depart from the ideal, which you have to. This is according to Gandhi quite rightly. He's very honest. He says, as long as we are human beings, then violence is essential. Some degree of violence is essential. So now you have this problem that you have to commit some violence as long as you are living in this world. So now this creates some problems for Gandhi because he also believed, as you all know, that ends don't justify means. So if ends don't justify means, and violence is necessary, and violence is an evil, so what do? We are stuck with violence, whatever we do, very often. So this is one problem I want to discuss to some degree. And there's a principle of double effect, which some of you may have heard of, which is one way of solving this problem of different kinds of evils you have choice of. On this principle, you say that you should never intentionally do an evil. But if evil results as a side effect of your actions, and you had to do those actions, you are not responsible for the side effects, because you had a duty to do your action. So you're not. I'll explain. An example will make it clearer. It's the case of abortion. If on the doctrine of double effect, you should never kill a fetus, provided it's reached personhood. But you should never kill a fetus or remove a fetus, which amounts to killing, because that would be an evil. But then, if you are then letting the mother die, isn't that just as bad? Suppose the mother died because you don't remove the fetus. On this doctrine, no, that doesn't matter. Of course, it's very sad that the mother died, but we haven't done a wrong, we haven't done an evil, we haven't violated the principle that good ends don't justify evil means. This is just a side effect of what we had to do, what we are duty to do, that is never to do evil. We have so that's how the doctrine works. It's a very controversial doctrine. It's very popular among Catholics in particular. And I think, and I've argued this at length in the book, Gandhi presupposes something like this doctrine. I'll give examples from it also. But this is very much in, you see, Gandhi not only believed, had to adhere to this doctrine, but he made additional complications because of his belief that non-violence is a moral principle, and so therefore any violations of non-violence is evil. Any violence is evil. Now, violence we have to do, according to Gandhi. All these things are Gandhi's views. We have to do them. So we have to use violence evil means, according to Gandhi. Now, so he's in much more of a dilemma here, because we have to do evil, whatever. See, in the case of the abortion case, it gives an answer at least. But in the case of, the answer is that you let the mother die. It's very sad, but you let the mother die. But in the case of the Gandhi, non-violence, we are so often stuck with violence, whatever we do. But so we have to use it as a means. I'll give some examples now. Gandhi was once asked if violence if there can be violence in a spirit of love, and he emphatically said, no, never. And I had the impertinence to not only say Gandhi is wrong on this matter in this reply, but also to say that Gandhi's own view is different from what Gandhi says it is. When he says no, never, that's not Gandhi's view, because let me explain this. This is because it's an impertinent thing to say, that look, you're wrong about the way you interpret your own view. But that's exactly what I'm saying. Gandhi has, you see, he's very honest. He's a very honest man. And Orwell actually complimented him that unlike normal pacifists, he's ready to face difficult cases for his view. He's not going to hide behind some facades. So here he is, there's a need for violence in this world. This is an obvious objection. Now Gandhi can deal with some of the cases. The easiest cases for Gandhi are paternalistic violence, or so-called paternalistic violence. See, Gandhi said that it's only harming a person that's really forbidden. But if you're not harming a person, if you are benefiting him, then this is allowed. Now, if you use slap a child for its own good, so then he's happy with it. If someone is hysterical, you slap them. If it's the only way, that's allowed because you're trying to benefit him. In fact, in Hind Swaraj, someone actually said, if this is your view, then why don't we kill all the British rulers and all the English people? Because they are sinning here so much, and we'll benefit them by killing them, prevent them from doing these vile acts in India. And he replied, can you honestly say that's your motive? Because, as you know, the motive was hatred of the British, etc. No, not love of the British, and we want to save your souls and kill you for that reason. So what I'm trying to say is that in cases of paternalistic violence, he's relatively at home. He can deal with these examples. The really difficult examples for him are self-defense and also violence to save innocent third parties. If you take innocent third parties, he said that if there's someone wanting to kill a friend of yours or some innocent person on the road, and you, so what do? Gandhi says you interpose yourself in between the two. But not all of us are capable of non-violently sacrificing our life for that. Gandhi then, and these are, he varies. Sometimes he has an extreme view that, interposing yourself will always save the third man. But it's not always true. I mean, very often, getting in between someone who's about to harm someone will result in harming the victim and yourself. Not all of us are very strong. Then the moderate Gandhi agreed that yes, if you don't have the non-violent virtues cultivated to heights, then you should use violence to prevent, use the minimum violence, but you use it to prevent harm to this innocent person. Now, you have this, and then he dealt with monkeys. Monkeys come and eat crops. Should we just let them eat the crops? Or should we just, so we can't reason with them. So he allowed, we can't reason with them, yes, that's true. So let's get rid of them, let's kill the monkeys. Similarly with dogs who have rabies or something, you kill them. In the case of illness like the dogs, you could also say you're killing them for their own benefit. You could hardly say you're killing the monkey for its benefit. You're killing the monkey to prevent him from harming others. So this is straight violence, which lands Gandhi in the problem that he sanctions violence. So now his defenders of Gandhi sometimes say that he with animals, yes, you have to use violence sometimes. Also with, this was an old-fashioned expression that it's a derogatory term now, but Gandhi used to use it. With lunatics, you sometimes have to use it. Because if there's a lunatic with a gun and about to shoot us all, but you have to kill him, not for his benefit. Don't do tricks here. You have to kill him to save others. So still, defenders of Gandhi say, well, look, these are exceptional cases. Monkeys and lunatics, they're not the bulk of our, we are all sensible people, and we should all be totally non-violent with these minor exceptions. But I think Gandhi made more major exceptions also. Because it's a very artificial distinction between rationality and irrationality. If you look at what happens in society, you take these sex maniacs raping women, what do you do then? Suppose you don't have much choice to reform them before the event. I mean, in the short run, what do you do? And he, actually at his weakest in that case, by the way. I mean, with regard to women, sometimes he says awful things. I don't want to defend him. He says, a woman as pure as Sita can't be raped and things like that. There's no consolation to him. Then he says there are some yogic practices which I hear you can cultivate, and those yogic practices can help you to kill yourself. now this is very odd here. And why? This is also, these are not just individual cases. These are matters of social change. You see, the defenders I referred to often say that in some minor individual cases, you might need to make exceptions, but in social and political change, you don't need to make these exceptions. But suppose you want to deal with the problem of rape. This is a social matter. It's not just an individual matter. It concerns individual, but it's a social matter. So it's the idea that a rapist might just be irrational. It doesn't matter if they're irrational, but if they're doing something awful like this, and you have no time to just take them away, or you have to be violent then. Now another interesting example is war. Now Gandhi, by the way, I will eventually give a partial defense of Gandhi if I get that far. Sorry. With war, he was very interesting. Again, he's very honest. In the Boer War, in the First World War, he was out with the ambulance, etc., helping the war effort. And Pakistan, India's war with Pakistan, he said, given that there isn't a non-violent army, that he can't impose his solution. There were two problems. One, that there wasn't a non-violent army. Secondly, the people of Kashmir didn't want the non-violent army instead of the real army to help them. And most people wouldn't like a non-violent army as a substitute for a real army. I mean, if they were really, if their defense was really threatened. So Gandhi, as a good Democrat, he agreed that I can't impose my solution on these people, even if I had dictatorial powers, but I wouldn't impose it. So in all these cases, Gandhi has a problem, but now we have the need for violence. And how do you justify your position? I hope I find that quote, because that's the most important quote in Gandhi's writing, at least as I am interpreting them. So, I hope I had. On the other hand, when violence is unavoidable, and the quote begins, it must be spontaneous, must be the lowest minimum, must be rooted in compassion, must have discrimination, restraint, detachment at its back, and must lead us every moment to the path of ahimsa. This, to my, I'm interpreting Gandhi by giving references in my book. I give all the time references, not just my forcing my views that this is Gandhi. Now, this quote, I think, is absolutely essential to understanding Gandhi, and I'll explain a bit of it. There are two things that he says about the use of outward violence. That one is that it is never justified, but it can sometimes be excused or pardoned. The other thing is that, and that's why this quote is so important, that it must lead us every moment to the path of ahimsa. Gandhi distinguished violence as a creed from violence as a matter of policy or tactic. People like Nehru and Patel, the bulk of them, majority of them, were non-violent, they followed the non-violent method as a tactic, as an expedient, and he thought that was absolutely wrong. If you believe in non-violence, it should be as a creed, and that he attributed the partition riots also and the Hindu-Muslim problem which led to the partition riots to the fact that this he admitted people who joined the non-violent movement as an expedience. Although he did once cynically say some years ago that he said, I think I better allow people who believe in non-violence as an experience, because otherwise I'll just have a non-violent army of one. Okay. Now here's where I'm building a consistent Gandhian approach, which I think is absolutely practicable and this. See, if you must get rid of all inner violence, hatred, malice, envy, jealousy. These are all also violent. They are inward violence. Then there's outward violence, which is physical violence. And Gandhi says that outward violence is excusable or pardoned in the cases I've just referred to, provided is done with detachment, with discrimination, restraint, compassion, etc. And that's why I'm suggesting that compassion can be combined with violence. Use the minimum violence necessary. You have compassion for the person. During the war with Pakistan, the first war, Gandhi didn't forget, he wasn't full of hatred for Pakistanis at all. He had a respect for all human beings. But he said that, as you know, he went on fast for this, on the assets problem, that India was holding on to assets that belonged to Pakistan. During the war, Nehru and others said that this is a war, they use it for military purposes. But Gandhi would say nothing. No, it's there, it belongs to them, we should give it to them. I would say this is violence with compassion. And this particular example was one of the ones that Nathuram Godse gave for killing Gandhi. So he was a Satyagrha in a way for this cause. Now, what I'm saying is, if you take so you need to do violence from time to time, but you still can follow ahimsa as a creed. You are still committed to ahimsa, and it shows. How do you show your commitment? It's all very well to say you are committed to ahimsa, if you're doing a violent deed. How do you show it? You show it in two ways. One, your heart is pure. You're detached. Now the other way is that because you believe in non-violence as a creed, you do put all your effort into making society more non-violent. So that's what non-violence as a creed is, as opposed to as a tactic. You just use it against British, then you forget about it. No, you used it all the time, and you do your best, and people's best varies, of course. But every time you are violent, you do something to reduce such violence, this violence, in all walks of life that you can. This is all Gandhi, by the way, none of it is me, but it's just a selection is mine. And that's how this passage about ahimsa can make sense. And must lead us every moment to the path of ahimsa. How does violence lead to ahimsa? Well, in these ways, that you take a paternalistic case. You slap a child for its own good, but then you have devised ways of dealing non-violently with the child. You don't keep on, or if you have, what is that called, ECT, where, the electroconvulsive therapy, awful stuff that, you impose on mentally ill people. So your child has that, you impose that on him for his own good. It's allowed. But you must strive for ahimsa. You must help to either discover alternate treatments for this, more non-violent treatments, and in other spheres also. You see, someone who believes in non-violence as a creed is committed to non-violence in other spheres also. If animals are allowed into your consideration, you shouldn't eat meat. But of course, again, everyone has to compromise, and Gandhi explicitly said, everyone compromises, their own judges of where best to compromise. But you go in that direction. So every time you're doing violent thing, you do some soul searching, and how you increase, follow ahimsa. That is what he do in North Delhi and other places. So how much time?
Another 5 minutes and then
the other thing I want to mention is about self-sacrifice. That's very important to Gandhi, because self-sacrifice is done by these volunteers. Now, isn't that violence? If you suffer, and you suffer a lot, isn't that violence? Even if you voluntarily suffer, but suffering is still violence to yourself. But Gandhi says no. This is not suffering. It is suffering, but it's not violence. And the Satyagrahi is ennobled by his self-sacrifice. If a Satyagrahi, and you have non-violent armies, for example, and some people are killed, then you've saved other people, non-violent, and you've saved. Now the objection is, but look, how have you haven't sacrificed the Satyagrahis? His Sarvodaya is welfare of all. It's not just welfare of some, it's welfare of all. And Satyagrahis, who were such good people, you sacrificed them. And his answer to that is twofold. One, that in the next life they'll be much better off. By the way, that's quite a good objection. No, I wouldn't laugh at that. No. I mean, I have no objection to that. That's perfectly fine. In fact, Orwell said that, provided is for the other world, Gandhi's philosophy is for other worldly people, so that's all right. But the more controversial thing he says is that these people will be better off even in this life. Now, in this life, someone who just died as a Satyagrahi, how is he better off? Well, he gives the example of Christ. Christ has won in the long run because we all admire Christ. The other people, Pontius Pilate, whoever it was, we've forgotten who they are even, So the people who were sacrificed like Christ, their moral and spiritual well-being is wonderful. It's so wonderful that they are. But now, there's a quote from Gandhi I had, I don't know if I didn't bring the quote somewhere, but it's roughly like this. The end of human conduct is to increase the moral and mental powers of the individual plus his happiness. This last thing, happiness, is very important. I mean, you can use grander terms, bliss, anand, and this and that. Not just in the next life, but in this life. And in fact, I would say it's neglected by economists and others. I think people's well-being is much more important than many of the gross national products, etc. Now, if you consider well-being, well-being can't include just moral and spiritual well-being to the exclusion of the happiness element, because happiness is important to. If people have suffered in this world and then they've died, they've been bumped off because of non-violent army, so then their consolation will have to be in the next life, if there is a next life. But Gandhi is claiming even in this life they are better off. But they are not, you see, because many of them, they are dead. They are not here to enjoy the, they say, oh, what a wonderful man. Gandhi at least had a long life before he died, was assassinated. But take some young Jawan who's killed, or so young Satyagrhi who's killed. He's not there to enjoy the great spiritual and moral thing. We build statues to him and praise him, but he's not there to enjoy it. So I better stop now. So I think what I'm saying is Gandhi's Satyagraha stuff presupposes the next life. But there's also some, just one brief thing. This is meant, the Satyagraha thing is it works. It's meant to work by transforming your opponent's psychology. You see. He's so bowled over, disarmed by what's happened, and this doesn't always work in the short run. I mean, in short run, I'll give you another quote if I find it. Otherwise, I'll just stop. At times the spectacle of, this is someone, Webb Miller, a journalist in the 30s who came to, as a progressive left-wing journalist. He records, at times the spectacle of unresisting men being bashed into a bloody pulp sickened me so much that I had to turn away. The Western mind finds it difficult to grasp the idea of non-resistance. I felt an indefinable sense of helpless rage and loathing, almost as much against the men who were submitting unresistingly to being beaten up as against the police wielding the clubs and so on. So he was feeling some sort of contempt for these poor Satyagrahis who were allowing them to just helplessly like lambs to the slaughter. Now, Gandhi would say that, look, this is in the short run, but in the long run, the magic works. And it did work in some cases, like General Smuts, what was his opponent, it became his friend, etc. Certainly the magic works. But then the problem is, what do you do in the short and medium term? You see, in the long run it works, but in the long run, as Keynes said, we're all dead. And in the short and medium term, again, violence is needed. But then the solution is what I've suggested is potentially there in Gandhi, which is that you follow Ahimsa every time. Every time you're violent, you try and promote non-violence. Yeah, I better stop now. Thank you.
Well, friends, now is the time for questions or brief comments. Please wait for the mic. Yeah. Ramin, you have the mic there. You want to speak?
Okay, thank you very much for your lecture. I found it interesting, and so my question is, you compared Tolstoy and Gandhi, and it goes it's very close to the title of your speech, actually, with the conquest of ego. If we compare the two, I'm trying to make my comment in a way that is a question and not just a comment. would you agree by saying that both Gandhi and Tolstoy, and that's how Gandhi is influenced by Tolstoy and Christianity, they are thinkers who are anthropologically optimistic, meaning that, as you know, in philosophy, when we say anthropologically optimistic, that they are those thinkers who think that man by nature can change. Man by nature is not evil, like the way that others might think. But this is what we understand by perfectibility, that even somebody like Jean-Jacques Rousseau talks about. And in the same way, I think that both of them, they agree with Rousseau that it's a civilization that makes man corrupted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but this is my question. When we read Tolstoy and we compare it with Gandhi, Tolstoy has a very Pascalian way of looking at problem of good and justice, because Pascal says if you don't know, if a man doesn't know, doesn't have a faith, he will never get to know justice and good. Okay, so that's exactly how I understand Tolstoy, because when we read his novels, the way he compares the characters, those characters like in Anna Karenina, those characters who are like Levin, closer to nature, closer to God, they are good people. Those who are bureaucrats like Karenin, they are not good people actually, and they don't do good. Now, with Gandhi actually, the problem is not that much faith, it's compassion actually, I think. In a very Schopenhauerian way, meaning that men, human beings are capable of being compassionate, and justice has to be always compassionate, because we can do the good. But he doesn't say that we always have to be faithful to be good. He said we all have the capacity if we actually know how to be compassionate. And that's where SATYAGRHA comes in actually, and that's why he calls Jesus Christ a heroic Satyagrahi. I mean, just imagine how his approach to Christianity is to make of the prophet of Christianity, Jesus Christ, and by his reading of Sermon on the Mount, to make a Satyagrahi out of him, and not necessarily a prophet. Thank you.
Yes, so I'm not sure if I followed it, but I think you're absolutely right that about the optimist. They were both optimists. They both thought there was great potential for good in human beings, I mean, divine potential. I don't know Tolstoy that well. I mean, I know him with regard to Gandhi. Gandhi was certainly influenced very strongly, and also I didn't have time for this theory of the second best, which I've developed in my book, that because our ideals are unattainable, we need a second best to fall back on, which is higher than the minimum kind of rules that we need for running society, don't murder and all that. That's not the second best. For example, Tolstoy says that ideal is celibacy, but marriage is the second best. And Gandhi gives a lot of examples of second best. One is, of course, ideal is non-violence. That's the obvious one, but violence is much better than cowardice. Then other ones are civil disobedience. You have second best and third best. Civil disobedience, where the ideal is duty-based civil disobedience. The other one is voluntary poverty. Voluntary poverty was a great ideal for both Tolstoy and Gandhi. But Gandhi says that this is not too demanding, it may be too demanding for the ordinary person. So then you regard your wealth as the wealthy should be trustees for society. And so in these ways he had great similarity. That's all I want to stress. I'm not an expert on Tolstoy. I'm willing to defend the little bits I've said, comparing the two, and the inspiration Gandhi got from him. But they were certainly both were you're absolutely right. They were both very optimistic. And Gandhi also thought that there is no evidence that he can give for his view that right will triumph at the end. He very much believed in Satyamev Jayate. But why should Satyamev Jayate be true? I mean, he had no. He said that's a matter of faith. It doesn't go against science, it's against evidence, but it's something that Gandhi also at least once said that this whole thing might be a fascinating delusion. So I take it even includes truth and non-violence, everything, all might be a fascinating delusion, but it hasn't been shown to be wrong. So he was a scientist, but he wouldn't go against evidence, but he would certainly go beyond evidence, and these are what from the example. But I'm sorry, I haven't answered your question because I don't know enough about Tolstoy.
Really, thank you very much. It was very good hearing all your examples and your range of knowledge. I want to ask what you think about something that Gandhi said in 1926, which struck me as very helpful. He wrote, as you know, 7 articles called "Is This Humanity?" And it was about one of your examples, killing rabid, or possibly rabid dogs.
Yeah.
And I thought he said something very helpful at the end. He said that if you kill, not for the sake of the killed, it's always violent, and violence is always wrong. No exception.
You're quite right.
But he said, you are sometimes in a position where whatever you do is wrong, and you've got to choose the lesser wrong. Now that's not letting you off. Perhaps in other places he tried to let you off. But I think the strength in this idea, now this is not to say you haven't done anything wrong. Perhaps you deserve pardon, perhaps certainly you have an excuse. That doesn't mean you haven't done wrong. I think this makes the situation very much clearer. We are sometimes in the position where, through no fault of our own, whichever way we go, we do wrong. And in this particular case, what he said was that the members of the city council who had authorized killing the dogs, for them it was the lesser wrong because they'd undertaken to protect the people from rabid dogs. He didn't say that for anybody it was better. It was a special reason. And in all the cases I've encountered where he says that some particular violence is the less bad course, he has some particular reason of his own. He may be wrong about his particular reasons. But I think that makes it easier to think that he's not just sort of needing some support by saying, oh, it's perfect, you're right, you haven't done anything wrong. And he's admitting, at least in 1966, you have done wrong. But it was better to do the lesser wrong. Don't you think that's helpful?
No, I agree. I think you were away, you had gone out for a little while when I made discussing these points, that he would allow these excuses as a pardon or as an excuse, but not as a justification. And also, I said that that quote, that famous, the quote about from Gandhi that you should use the minimum compassion, minimum violence, that and it should be with as much compassion and with a view to promoting ahimsa. So how does violence promote ahimsa? And then you, because you follow non-violence as a creed. That's where non-violence as a creed comes. That you work in over a long stretch of over a wide area of life. You try and promote non-violence. You turn society into a better place. So yes, you do sometimes lesser of the two evils, but every time you do it, it should shock you into promoting going in the direction of the non-violent society. See, otherwise there wouldn't be anything original about Gandhi at all. About if he just said, look, if there's evil, you just do lesser of the two evils. I mean, we don't need Gandhi to tell us that.
There's a huge contrast with Christianity, which had a problem. And for 500 years, Christianity tried to deny that you could, through no fault of your own, be in a position where whatever you did, you had to do some wrong. Because if you have the further idea that there's a just God, he will punish anything you do wrong, and so on, you can't allow this. Greek tragedy allowed it all the time. So it's quite significant that Gandhi is not on the side of Christianity here. He's clear-eyed. He sees sometimes we have to do something wrong, but it was better, sorry, not better, it was less bad that we look for the less bad wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
As we know, in the freedom struggle, there were three great movements under Mahatma Gandhi, each separated by almost a decade from each other. The non-cooperation movement of 1920, the civil disobedience oblique salt satyagraha of 1930, and finally the Quit India movement of 1942. Now, the Quit India, when he coined this slogan, Quit India, so there was some criticism even in the British press that here is the apostle of non-violence giving a violent slogan. So somebody raised an objection and wrote to Gandhi, does it match your philosophy? So that was answered not by Gandhi himself. A reply was received from his office. Perhaps, I think Mahadev Desai was dead by then. Pyarelal or somebody replied that what the Mahatma meant was, he didn't want the Britishers to leave India, they can stay there. He wanted the British imperialism to go, the British Raj to go. But as people, they are most welcome. So this was a reply which came from his office. And the person who asked this question was my late father, who was a freedom fighter. But I'm not very sure whether it was Mahadev Desai, because I think he was dead, or Pyarelal or somebody else answered on his behalf. So what do you think? Do you think Gandhiji should have coined this slogan a little differently to make it compatible with his own philosophy, Quit India?
But I don't follow how Quit India involves him in violence. Non-cooperation by itself is not violent. So you have to show something more, but not just that he used the slogan Quit India. He's not saying Quit India by force. He's saying we'll make it difficult for you. By the way, that's quite important. This is again back to the principle of double effect. You see, if you are non-cooperating with evil, you are not using necessarily violence. If you, I'll give you the example of,
Go ahead.
yeah. If the milk drivers of New York have a grievance against the municipality, this quote from Gandhi, for criminal mismanagement of its trust, and if in order to bend it they decided to cut off the milk supply, they would be guilty of a crime against humanity. But suppose that the milk drivers were underpaid by their employers, that they were consequently starving, they would be justified if they had tried every other available and proper method of securing better wages in refusing to drive the milk carts, even though their action resulted in the death of the babies of New York. It was no part of their duties as employees under every circumstance to supply milk to babies. There is no violence when there is no infraction of duty. He then goes on to apply such ideas. He applies to the Indian non-cooperation movement, which involved the boycott of foreign goods. This is how he defends himself. If the people of Lancashire suffer thereby, non-cooperation cannot by any law of morals be held to be an act of violence. India never bound herself to maintain Lancashire. And I have full agreement with Gandhi here. You see, what he's saying is he was willing to cooperate on honourable terms with the British, but non-cooperation on dishonourable terms it involves participation in evil. I'm not going to do that. And we want our dignity. We don't want to cooperate on such terms. So and this especially applies to omissions. You see, this act omission distinction is quite important. You can kill by omission also, but only if you have a duty of care. If he is drowning and I don't save him, and if I have a duty of care, which I have as a human being, as his friend also, I have killed him. But India, he's saying, didn't bind itself to look after Lancashire. It's you people who forced us to look after. I mean, your theory that we must look after. We haven't said. We are willing to work on honourable terms with you, but we won't. So this was his reply to Tagore also. He said Tagore was accusing him of being too nationalistic and all. No, he said my windows are open to the world. I'm willing to cooperate with the whole world, but on honourable terms, not on dishonourable terms. Sorry, I don't know if it answers your question.
Thank you. Professor, my question relates to this title of your talk.
Yeah.
And I want to refer you to the September 1947, the Calcutta riots which took place. And there when Gandhiji was asked this question when he went on fast until death by Rajgopalachari, he said that you think you're going to change the heart of the killers and the hooligans by starving yourself to death. And he gave the answer that I can't change the heart of the killers, but I want to change the heart of those people who have sympathy for the killers. And that's really how the narrative actually goes, that finally, as it happened, that the housewives who were waiting for
I see. Yes.
when the housewives were waiting for the husbands and cooking for them, they themselves would refuse food to eat because they said, how can I eat the food when Mahatma is dying for our sins, which is very much Christian kind of a Christ-like kind of an example. And which is what the Rajgopalachari said when the violence all stopped. And he said that there's no greater miracle in India today, not even the independence of India, than Gandhiji's conquest of evil in Calcutta. So this point that you mentioned about how you inflict pain on yourself, and by doing that you inflict pain on the others who have affection for you, you change the heart not only of the people who are there, but you change the whole atmosphere. And I think it's quite relevant in today's time. All the extremism and violence goes around.
I agree with you. I mean, I don't think I've said anything which goes against that because I mean, I did say that. I would still say that, Satyagrahas who died. I mean, I did say earlier that Gandhi lived to a ripe old age. I mean, but by now I'm much older than him. But still, he was old by those standards. And if some young man Satyagrahi dies, then you can't say that his well-being has been increased by his death. I mean, still, it's a great tragedy, and especially for someone who believes in Sarvodaya, welfare of all. This poor man has died. He may have done a lot of good to others. He may have spread the message. That's true. But we've still lost such a fine person. And you believe in Sarvodaya, this is a problem. And that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Next one there.
Yeah, please.
Just one line question. Do you regard Gandhi as a philosophical anarchist?
Oh, anarchist. Yes, as an ideal, he thought, he explicitly regarded himself, I think, he used some such term, enlightened anarchist or something like that. Yes, I think I would, because he wants a minimum state. So it's a bit like his ideals. You don't achieve it totally, but you go in that direction. So he was against centralized state. He was in favor of village autonomy, etc. But I think he would say that you work towards it as far as you can go. Perhaps you can never achieve it totally. But there are some other anarchists who are, willing to just tomorrow say let's abolish all laws. He wasn't like that.
Anybody else? Well, thank you very much, Mr. VINIT HAKSAR. You have provoked some interesting responses as well. It's time that it's time that we should be rediscovering many aspects of Gandhi, many forgotten aspects of his life and vision, and you helped us at least with some of those aspects this evening. Before we close, the next Gandhi Matters session would be on 6th of March, when the historian Sudhir Chandra speaks about Gandhi and partition. We are not only, we have such venerable grey-haired people to talk to you, but we also care for the young, especially because Raza was very keen that foundation should promote the young. So we are organizing a 2-day colloquium of young intellectuals drawn from all over India. And we are calling it Vichar Vinod. In our tradition, Vinod was also meant enjoying. So this is a kind of enjoying ideas. And we have the overall theme, which is, what is the question? And we are raising some 7 or 8 questions ourselves, but leaving it to them. First, is religion in crisis? Can Muslims speak? Is annihilation of caste on the agenda? Is citizenship a limited concept? Does truth exist? Is democracy facing a terminal crisis? Is communication impossible? This will be held in this same building on the ground floor on 1st and 2nd March at 10 o'clock in the morning, from 10 o'clock in the morning. So any one of you who are interested in ideas, who'd like to enjoy ideas like you did this evening, are most welcome. We will also provide you with some lunch and of course tea. Thank you very much, Mr. HAKSAR, and thank you all of you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And incidentally, on 22nd of February, that is day after, an exhibition of Raza and Krishan Khanna together will open in Vadhera Art Gallery in the evening. You are most welcome to be on for a while.